Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back. Femi is with us now. Femi Oladehin is the senior partner at Argentil Capital Management Limited. Hello, Femi. Good to see you again. I hope you can hear me.
And I can hear you clearly. This is my sad face.
What is the cause of your sadness? I think let's start from there because everybody now, you see, there seems to be a common denominator in the country. Tell me where it is if we can help.
Well, I think it's the general erosion in wealth, general erosion in purchasing power. I think that when you see how the wealth of average Nigerians have halved at the minimum over the last 12 months, it just tells you how deep the problems that we're dealing with are and how, again, complicated the options available to governments are. And I think you're going to see me on this call today um, oscillate between sympathy for the government as well as sympathy for Nigerians because we're in a very difficult situation.
Mm. Okay, so let's continue on that note. Let me try to navigate my way on that note. Is Femi still there? Can I see him, please? For what you've just said, Nigerians, their wealth eroding. You know, for the past few days, in fact, yesterday, I was really deep in thought and I was asking myself, what is happening to the middle class in Nigeria? We are seeing, you know, their wealth, if they even had any, being eroded. From my own analysis and from what I've been seeing, actually, you see that it's the middle class now that are really jackpying, as it were. So it leaves us right now in Nigeria between the haves, the really haves, that's the people that really have, the elites and the poor. The middle class are going. So I was asking myself yesterday that what kind of economy is President Tinubu creating? You know, deep really in my thought, what kind of opportunities? Because you're seeing that there are no opportunities for the middle class to get into the higher echelon, and even for people in the poverty bracket to inch up, to live above poverty, and perhaps even move into prosperity. I was really deep in thought yesterday, you know, as I was thinking about today's show. Femi, do you have anything to say about that? And for you even
So
to
there's a lot
echo
to
that,
say.
yes, yeah.
Yes, so there's a lot to say about that. And let's start with the middle class. This is probably the third in my lifetime, the third decimation of the middle class that we've seen in Nigeria. The first one probably happened in the early 80s. I was so pretty young then. But I felt the effects of that decimation with my parents. The second decimation happened around the mid 90s during the Abacha era and the implications and the fallout of that. President Obasanjo in his first and second terms probably did more for the Nigerian middle class than anyone else. I think in that period we had almost 5 million families who moved into middle class range in terms of wealth creation. This is probably the third worst decimation of the middle class that we've seen. But I must confirm that this is not started President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It will be unfair to heap all the blame of this decimation on him. In fact, the person who should actually take the blame, and if we recall, I've always said this, was the Buhari regime. The Buhari regime was the most destructive regime in Nigeria's history in terms of destroying economic power, in terms of destroying the foundations of a sustainable
Femi, but
economy.
it's the same
And I
APC
think that's where the
government.
key is.
I hope you can
You know,
hear me. I hope it's the same APC government.
yes, I can hear
It's the
you.
same, yes, it's the same
Well,
APC
look, I mean, yes,
ideology,
it is the
APC
same.
government. This president was the national leader at that time. Brought in, you know, they came up, of course, political expediency at that time. Oh, President Jonathan needed to be ousted, and APC came in, sold all kind of narrative to Nigerians. Nigerians also being as gullible as they were at that time, voted because they wanted a change. They could have even voted, if it was not even Buhari, somebody else at that time. But economic history now has told us that, you know, sometimes your past could actually be better than the future you are being promised. So it's the same APC government.
So I think it's important to understand that, Nancy, the APC is a coalition of I would say, strange bedfellows. Um, President Buhari was a socialist at best, and in real sense, what probably on the Marxist spectrum of the socialist cadre. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on the other hand, has is still a big government person, but you've seen some of the policies that they've come up with that are pro the private sector. So whilst they're the same party, it's important to differentiate that they didn't come from the same political cloth. And that's, well, let's leave that in one place. The reality is that let's focus on the policies. The biggest drain on the Nigerian economy that we're dealing with today is the cash overhang. During the MPC announcements yesterday, the central bank governor spoke about the fact that money supply in Nigeria today is at 106 trillion naira. Now, Nancy, let me put that into perspective for you. In 2007, Nigerian money supply was around 20 billion naira. Today, we're talking about money supply of around 106 trillion naira. That is significant. And unfortunately, the productive base of the economy, which should be the biggest, the biggest driver of that velocity of money changing hands, has completely been decimated. So if you look at GDP performance of the manufacturing sector over the last 10 years, GDP performance of that sector has been consistent. I think there's only been probably a few quarters where we've had positive output from that sector. The Stanbic IBTC Bank Purchasing Managers Index has consistently showed a lower expectation from purchasing managers. So when the economy is not producing and you've simply printed money, the problem with that is hyperinflation. And that's what we've got. So what you're seeing the central bank try to do is to undo the damage that has already been done. Unfortunately, we have governments that are not sincere. And by talking about governments that are not sincere, I'm speaking about both the federal government and the state governments. They're not sincere about how they want to bring Nigeria out of this problem. And Nigerians need to demand more. And that's the reality.
You know, Femi, I know, let's, at the beginning of the show, I said we are going to discuss a lot, and it's here and there because they're all interconnected. You mentioned that the central bank governor, of course, I was there at the MPC meeting on Tuesday at the briefing. The kind of money supply, the volume of money in the economy, it's just that it's the briefing, because if you leave me, I had a lot of questions for Cardoso, more questions, which definitely I will engage him soon on that. 106 trillion naira money supply in the economy, in the hands of who, really? Because if you ask me, it's not in my hands. I can actually count the amount of money or the volume of money that I have, and perhaps for you, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, the money supply, the voluminous money supply they're talking about, is not in the hands of you and I, or even in the hands of the poor. It's within the hands of the same politicians. If you go to their houses now, there are dollars there. I think it was even you were having the discussion, was it yesterday? We saw what happened to the Naira yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yes. FAC
So
fund.
that's what I was going to talk about.
So for every time they give them FAC money, they come to Abuja here, they change it to dollars. Come on, this rascalism is too much. So at the end of the day, is the poor that is suffering this?
No, but so that was what I spoke about the culpable deniability that the state governments try to create, but does not exist. I would dare say that probably the most criminal elements in the country today, the people who should be accused of economic sabotage, is actually the state government and the local government. So I said this: the CBN governor increased interest rates on Tuesday. In any other economy in the world, higher interest rates means a stronger economy. But unfortunately for the CBN governor, on the same Tuesday, FAC monies were released. By yesterday morning, the dollar had cost 1,700.
Yes.
It is obvious that the people who are driving the demand for the exchange rate are not the productive sectors of Nigeria. It is the state actors that are the biggest drivers of the exchange rate.
Because what we've seen is that for any time they release FAC funds, the naira depreciates.
It is, if I was still in school, Nancy, my thesis for my PhD graduation would effectively be the linkage between FAC and the devaluation of the
Of the
Nigerian
naira.
currency, because it is empirically proven that the moment that liquidity is pushed into the system, the next thing that happens is that there's an influx of naira into the market, and then the demand for dollars increases immediately. So what that tells you is that despite all of the efforts of the federal government, which is to ensure that there are palliatives being given to the poor so that they don't have to undo the reforms that they've put in place, those palliatives and all of those interventions are being sabotaged by what honestly in the military days would have been described as economic sabotage. Now, the big question here is, what does this mean for the average Nigerian? And the average Nigerian is suffering. I'm literally in Lagos now. I've been in Abuja for the last few days, and I've seen costs literally rise for the past few months in the country. You know, basic goods have become completely out of the reach of the average Nigerian, and that is something that the government needs to think about and ensure that the policies that we're looking at today are policies that are going to be able to turn this around in a short while. However, I honestly have very little hope that we're going to accomplish anything with these state governors continuing to deplete the reserves of the country.
You know, and I think the Governor Yemi Cardoso even mentioned that. He was actually concerned about the relationship between FAC funds release and the depreciation of the naira. For a governor of a central bank to say that, it's actually very telling and very disturbing. And I can imagine that when they do is it their NEC meeting or so, that meeting that the governors and the vice president do, that these governors should actually be given a stern warning, because what they are doing is undermining the nation's currency, you know, buying another currency, the number one economist currency in the world, to hedge against what? And that is why we saw like a state governor, for Yaya Bello now, paying the school fees of the children in one American school for like forever, you know, until I think the American school refunded the money. So the
Yeah,
rascality is too much. And I'm wondering what the president, of course, they are state governors, they are chief executives of their states too, but they can actually also be told by the president and even the vice president, whatever meetings they hold, that you guys are undermining the country. This is empirically proven. Anytime you guys get your money, naira go down.
so Nancy, you're correct. And I think perhaps there are even a few blocks that we need to think about. One of those is obviously the regulatory authorities. So let me explain what I'm saying now. Look, we have something called the NFIU. It's
Yes.
supposed to be a body that
Financial
is supposed to
intelligence unit.
monitor, yes, that's supposed to monitor cash flows and all of that. The NFIU needs to step up the game. Because unfortunately, these governors cannot be prosecuted because the Constitution has given them immunity. So whatever it is you're doing, you're only going to have to wait for 8 years or 4 years before you can actually hold the governor accountable. Now, as we've seen in the instance of Yahaya Bello, even after 8 years, he's still finding a way to. I mean, if you have 80 billion naira in your bank account, I imagine that you will be able to buy your way out of justice in any country in the world. No, so and that's where the bigger issues are. You know, and Nancy, I mentioned something earlier on when we were talking that during the military regimes, we had something called economic sabotage. Economic sabotage was anything that you did to intuitively sabotage the Nigerian economy. The reality is that what we are seeing now, especially when it comes to the empirical link between the release of FAC and the decimation of the naira, that is something that the country needs to start talking about, even at the constitutional level. Because you see, what is happening is that the federal government is putting all of these policies, trying to open a market, have an open market environment where business can plan. But if you have a significant chunk of the economy effectively operating outside of that control, then it means that all of the things you're doing, you're literally just punishing other people, and the biggest beneficiaries continue to benefit. And that's something to be concerned about.
Yeah.
Now, for we talked about inflation. Inflation onto something we've not been able to solve, which is why do we always convert our earnings to naira? Because that's also part of where the problem is coming from. Every single time the central bank gets dollars, it has to print naira. Nancy, that money was by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and it was created by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So at some point, we've got to make a decision. If this continues, we're on the way to Nigeria being Venezuela. That's the truth.
Exactly. And you know, I was in Geneva just a few days ago at the WTO, that's Geneva in Switzerland, and I was with a colleague from
Yeah.
South Africa, a journalist colleague. She writes for Business Day South Africa, and we're, you know, sharing ideas. Of course, the two biggest economies on the African continent. Okay, not the two biggest anymore. We have slipped to number 4, you know, but at least one of the biggest. And you know what she told me?
Yeah, number 4.
Yes, Tando actually mentioned and said, that we do not have appetite for dollar in South Africa. You dare not spend the dollar in South Africa. You know, it's about the rand. So if you are with dollar like this, it's like dollar is hot money. It's, you want to put it away and convert to the rand. And I was like, you know, the opposite is the case here in Nigeria. If you have it, you even want to store it. It's a store of value, and you praying that the naira depreciates so that you can get more naira. But in fact, let me read from the communique what the governor said. And I quote from the communique. Furthermore, members observed a strong correlation between FAC releases and liquidity levels in the banking system and its impact on the exchange rate. The committee therefore agreed to increase monitoring of future releases to address its effects on price development. This is coming from the central bank governor. And that was just taking,
Yep.
it just slide. It just slide. Now, just some of us know what are we serious in this
Yes.
country? You know what I thought about? I said, if we were in
Nancy,
China, if we were in China, this kind of thing no go happen.
exactly what I was going to say. Look, in statement, the National Assembly would immediately have created a panel of inquiry to find out why this is happening. This is actually pure economic sabotage.
Sabotage, yeah.
It is the reality. It is economic sabotage. So the central bank is effective, and that's what I said earlier. The central bank is effectively punishing business, punishing the lower class by increasing interest rates and all of those things, when the real people who are the culprits for the liquidity in the system are completely untouched. So yes, you sterilize another 5% of banks' balance sheet, but the reality is by next month they're going to release another 2 trillion naira, and the state governors are going to take 1.2 trillion naira and do whatever it is they like with it. So it's a counterintuitive approach to solving a problem that we need to fix. We actually need to talk about this as a country and fix it, because you are the ones that are paying for the profligacy of this state governors, and that's the reality.
Okay, let's go to another issue with the announcement from the presidency yesterday on the reshuffling of the cabinet. What's your view? Did it sound nice to you when you heard that? The 47-man, is it 47 now or 46? Since Betta Edu is not there. Can we actually also count the president as Minister of Petroleum, which I've openly and publicly stated here, that the president should not be Minister of Petroleum. Crude is like under commodity like rice and
Well,
gold.
we know who started that.
Yes, we know, which was a very bad
We know
example.
who started that.
Which was a very bad example. Why can't the president of Nigeria be Minister of Agriculture, for example, or Minister of Trade and Investment? Because crude is also like rice. It's like yam. It's being traded, you know. So what are your views on that? And I hope that perhaps with this reshuffling, the president would correct that if he listens. Hello, Femi, are you there? Hello, Femi. Okay. Let's quickly take a break. The network is underperforming this morning. Now this matters with the talk now. You know, ease of doing business and broadband network is not working. But you go to other countries, it's working swiftly, nothing they disturb. Let's take another quick break. All right, Femi is back. Femi Oladehin is a senior partner at Argentil Capital Management Limited. Femi, I hope you heard my question before the network decided to be unfriendly.
So I think I did. Just cue me in again on
Okay.
what I was supposed to respond to.
I asked about the ministers, the reshuffling of cabinet over non-performance.
Look, we had a track record in President Buhari, who throughout his entire tenure, for 8 years, he never did a cabinet reshuffle, and we're all looking at President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and expecting that for him to actually help the Federal Executive Council refresh itself, it's important that a cabinet reshuffle is done. There are some ministers that I would say, from just observing the performance of their sector, that should ordinarily be beneficiaries of in office. I'm not going to mention ministers, so that it doesn't look like I'm speaking out of turn. But there are some ministries that have done very well. But on the other hand, there are certain ministries that have literally failed the nation. We're talking of agriculture, where food prices have gone up by hundreds of percentages. Forget what the Federal Office of Statistics is saying to us. The real numbers we know are significantly higher than what the FOS is telling us. And there's not been any strategic plan that I'm aware of that has come out from the Ministry of Agri towards solving this problem and solving it once and for all. So there are certain offices that obviously, just looking at it from a performance perspective, we should be discussing the performance of those ministers. Recall at the beginning of the year that the presidency said to us that they were going to implement the Steve Oronsaye report. And we're still waiting for that implementation. This is September. The promise that was given to us was the first quarter of the year.
Yeah.
So there must be fallouts to such lack of performance, because that's the only way the people are going to trust the social contract between the government and themselves. The biggest problem right now is
okay. Is it okay? The network seems to be freezing again.
And spend 4 years without doing anything.
Yeah.
And continuing a job.
Okay, Femi, can you hear me? It's in and out.
It's in and out. I'm
yes,
so sorry.
yes.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Now, so let me ask another question. You talked about the Oronsaye report. I don't even want to go there because that should be a whole show. But that also brings me to the Bala Usman's question. The Special Advisor on Policy Coordination or Policy Delivery, or the name of our office, Policy Coordination. And I know that I think in April this year, she launched a citizen delivery app or a citizen delivery service, tracker. So how do you connect Bala Usman's office? And this, I think, if it's not the first of its kind, that this president created that office for policy coordination and delivery to be able to also coordinate ministers' performances and coordinate the different ministries together. So how do you think that office also have fared, since the president said he's going to reshuffle his cabinet? That's one. The second question is, the question of reshuffling itself, wouldn't it also create a problem in the sense that if you reshuffle, you take one minister to another ministry, they have been 1 year on the job because I think the president announced them in September of last year, and they were also sworn in again, I think, within the same September. So they are like 1 year in office, and all of them, they do hush, hush. Nobody wants to talk. You want to speak to them, they are like, okay, you know. So that's why the president said, go out and speak. Let your policies also speak for this administration. So do you also see a problem there in terms of the reshuffling, taking certain ministers to another ministry, and they will begin to learn again the ropes, as it were, even though some will be asked to go and perhaps new people will be brought in that. Would they do another retreat for those new people?
Well, so I want to imagine that as we know, the president has an agenda, and all of these guys, all 46 of them, 47, whichever number it is, they are members of the Federal Executive Council. So they are these meetings on a regular basis. They're always there. What becomes key for us is there a coordinated messaging that comes out from the government side? Look, and you talked about them speaking. One of the biggest concerns I had during the End Bad Government's protests was that the president was ministers largely speaking to Nigerians. You would have imagined that as a fallout of that, there would have been significantly more engagement. But you can actually point to the ministers that talk to Nigerians, or even to markets generally. Minister of Finance, you know, and a few other ministers here and there are at least at the forefront of talking about what the government is trying to do. I would say that the presidency definitely needs fresh blood. The ministers need fresh blood so that they can galvanize a country that's already losing hope. Because that's one of the very important things that we're not really talking about. The fact that the average Nigerian on the street is virtually hopeless, has no comfort about what the government is able to do for them. And the job of the ministers is to create policy and also to sell that policy to the market. And if the president gets his ministers to perform, then the government performs. So, and that's why I am hoping that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will do something that President Buhari never did, and which is hold his ministers accountable and fire the ones that have not performed. He did it when he was governor of Lagos State. I hope he has the political now, especially now that the country needs that push. The country is on the brink, Nancy.
Yeah, it's on the precipice. How about the humanitarian ministry? The humanitarian ministry has gone now for a long time without a minister. And that is a very key ministry in terms of alleviation of poverty, or perhaps even reduction of poverty amid the different natural disasters and emergency situations that we are having right now in Nigeria. What do you think? Okay, Femi, I hope that you heard me, because what would you say about that? For a president to be hush-hush for a long time without appointing a substantive minister to that ministry, people will say, okay, there are people working there, there's a permanent secretary or whatever. What does it say about President Tinubu too, you know, as it were? And do you think whether he would reinstate Betta Edu, or would he get a new minister for that ministry?
So Nancy, my recollection is that there is a minister who is supervising that ministry at the moment.
Minister of Finance.
Yes. So who is supervising that ministry at the moment?
We all know, Femi, we know that Mr. Wale Edun, he has so much to deal with at the finance ministry. The last time he was here on the show, the other 2 months ago or so, I asked him
a question. Stressed.
Yes.
He looked stressed. the poor man is chasing the place.
Exactly. You know? I asked him the question around that, you know, because there's a committee that the president set up. We've not even heard the last from the EFCC concerning the Betta Edu's case, as it were, you know. And the minister, Minister Edu, is even stressed. The last time I asked him a question around that, I couldn't piece out what he was telling me concerning the ministry. Okay, that they are trying to do implementation of cash transfers and all. That's not his purview. The same thing that the president is president, is being Minister of Petroleum, and we're having
Petroleum.
fuel queues, we should blame President Tinubu because he's Minister of Petroleum. The Minister of State for Petroleum there is just like a figurehead. Forget all those things we are talking about.
But let's understand the genesis of like the Ministry of Petroleum issue. We know that the genesis of the Ministry of Petroleum issue was Desiani. Desiani wielded the power of the Ministry of Petroleum, probably more than anybody else. Not even Rowano Lukman, the petroleum minister, wielded the kind of power that Desiani wielded. And I think presidents generally became rogue characters, take over that ministry. It's one of the most important ministries of the country. But let's go back to your question around the performance and the fact that we shouldn't have a country where we leave things in abeyance for so. Saidu has been out of a job or been suspended since probably January or February. We're in September. That is sufficient time to either fire her and appoint a substantive, because again, we're in a country where her ministry is actually fundamentally important to Nigerians if they do their job. So it's not a ministry that we should leave to time and chance. Deliberate about the implementation of the policies. We deliberate about finding a solution to Nigerian problems. So I'm still going to go back to challenging the president to do what he's always been able to do as a politician, which is find the smartest people. Nigeria has the preponderance of human beings who can bring in policy, who can be committed to the welfare of the nation. It's the job of the president to find those people, put them in office, back them with all the appurtenances of the government office, and get a result for Nigerians. Whether you think like it or not, this president has 2 years before the next election cycle. That is a short time for Nigerians to be patient, and results have to start happening as quickly as possible.
It's taking a look at petroleum minister. Of course, the king of Saudi Arabia is not the petroleum minister. The president of Brazil is not the petroleum minister, as it were. So I don't know if there should be a change of model or a change of tactics, since presidents being petroleum ministers since Obasanjo have not actually also solved the problem. President Buhari came in, we were all optimistic. Oh, okay, at the time, he knows about the petroleum sector through PTDF and all of that. He will, unlock the sector and all of that. It was same old, same old. So what exactly now, what kind of models should we have? But let's see what happens when the president reshuffles the cabinet, if he would indeed perhaps bring back better edu, if the coast is clear, or if he would appoint a new humanitarian ministry, or they would just be going like that. And this is the president that has the highest number of ministers in our history, as it were, and their KPIs are not too good to look at this point. Now, Femi, if we are just close to the end of the year. Femi, are you still there? Can you hear me? I hope you've not frozen on me. Hello? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. My director said it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. So let's go on another break and see if we can reconnect with him. You can send us your comments to our WhatsApp number, of course, to the WhatsApp number on your screen, and let's get what your views are concerning the burning economic issues. We'll be right back. I am Nancy. Does that mean that when there's a new government, the people managing perhaps the economy or any sector should now be agitated that there's a new sheriff in town and all of us will be asked to go?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, and great question, by the way.
It's a great question, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. It's a good question.
The school does not teach us about money, and this is money line. So we are the one that teaches people what financial education really is.
A lot of things that we need to address in this country, and one of those things definitely is corruption.
Let me start by commending you for what you've been doing for years. As I said, I've been following your show for almost 10 years now.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to have me to come to this great program.
Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. All right, welcome back. Femi is back with me. Femi, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about just a few days to the end of the year. Less than 100 days, actually, to the end of the year. What do you see for inflation, especially we've seen 32.19% as released by the MBS. A lot of people are contesting with the MBS with those figures that they hope they are not beginning to cook figures, you know, in light of petrol prices that are going up. So what do you see for inflation, inflationary pressure as we move towards the end of the year, bearing in mind that petrol prices will still definitely increase. it's not uhuru yet. Then number two, minimum wage adjustment. Yes, minimum wage adjustment on every side. So how will that also impact inflation?
I mean, look, my prognosis for inflation was always that we're going to end the year higher than 30%. I know that the central bank at some point, the MPC's target was for inflation to get to 21%. And I recall saying on your show that if that happened, I was going to eat my shirt, if you recall that show.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm not going to have to eat my shirt.
And
Because,
I reminded Cardoso of it on Tuesday. I told him that you said
oh,
the target.
yes. You
And
know,
it's
but
looking
the
like you're
reality
not
is
going
that
to get it.
that's an impossible target. I think we'll probably close the year at around 31, 32%. And the only reason why that is happening is because of the base effect, in the sense that we started to see a very high base towards the end of last year. That's when the dollar crossed the 1,000 naira mark. You know, we started to get to 1,002, 1,003. So from a base effect perspective, we expect inflation to continue to trend slightly higher. However, the food component of inflation, which is the non-core component of inflation, is where we're expecting some moderation, just because it's harvest season. The rains apparently may have been bad in Lagos, but the rains in the planting and the agric belt of the country have been good. So there should be some positive fallout from that higher, higher harvest effect. However, I think that where that high inflation environment is here to stay, as we continue to see pressure on the exchange rate as well, that bleeds into inflation, Nancy. The Naira has crossed 1,700. The next support level is at 1,800. If these governors continue to, do what they do, we expect that we'll probably hit 1,800 by about the end of October. That means that inflation will continue to increase. You also alluded to the point. There is no gainsaying that the minimum wage adjustments are going to also impact on inflation, because people are now going to have a bit more money. Money supply gets worse, and then it's a vicious cycle. So I don't see the central bank getting back to the 20%, 21% level for another 6 to 7 months, Nancy. Probably end of H1 2025.
So what do we do in the midst of all this chaos? Is there still a way out for us to begin to unlock opportunities? And like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, the middle class eroding, middle class living, middle class are the ones, even the poor also have businesses, nano businesses are shutting down. Micro businesses are shutting down. The government is also making it impossible for businesses to thrive. Minimum wage adjustment now, 70,000 naira, many businesses cannot pay that, even to their staff. That means a lot more people are unemployed even as we speak. The unemployment report came out from the MBS a few days ago, and it will worsen.
Those ones are playing, so please don't
Oh, Femi, this network isn't doing us fair at all today.
Get me. Such is the reality, Nancy. You know, sorry. Okay, so what I was saying was that, you know, during the 2023 elections, Nancy, there was something that one of the parties kept talking about. And what the presidential candidate was talking about became something that was like a cliche, but it was saying from consumption to production.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Reality, end of story.
Okay, Femi, can you hear me now? The network. If you can land on your point, then
I'm
I
so
think
sorry
yes.
about this.
If you
Yes.
can land on your point, I think we'll just make do with that today. So just land on your point. Oh, okay. The network is not making us.
So my point
Okay.
was,
Okay, Femi. Femi, I think we will leave it at that. But what I could get from your conversation, this last point you were trying to make, is that those ones are playing. So you mean the MBS? They are playing. Statistician General, are you hearing? They play. People think that these figures that your agency is releasing now is just plain numbers, because how can you be saying, okay, we have 5.3% unemployment? And I understand, at least I've had the Statistician General here on the show, and he tried to convince Nigerians why those numbers are coming in at, within that band, 5%, which is almost nearly full employment in other climes. But the SG is saying that it's international best practice models and methodologies that are used to get at that. I'm not holding brief for him, but you heard Femi say that those ones are playing. Femi, if you can hear me, I hope we will do this again sometime soon. And let's see. But thank you very much for your thoughts and perspectives this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been speaking with Femi Oladehin, who is a senior partner at Argentil Capital Partners, if I'm getting that right, Limited. All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't subscribe to the channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.